So now we call upon Julie Davis to open the case for her side. Hear, hear.
Ooh, that's somebody's. Is it yours, Daniel? It's MAC lipstick. It's Joshua's, definitely. Okay. Okay. So when I was asked to speak at this debate, I was actually pretty excited. I know the idea of debating whether pretty people and a society that's obsessed with deeming people pretty or not is quite superficial to a lot of people. But and honestly, I think that this is a topic that we don't speak enough about, and it often gets swiped under the carpet. Because I actually do believe that pretty hurts. We resent those who've won this ridiculous beauty standards random lottery, and then we shame those who didn't get it either. Our obsession with viewing people primarily in how they look, ignoring any other aspect of their identity, completely devalues so many people in our society, and it just creates this distorted narrative where people believe that the grass is greener for those who are deemed pretty. So I gave a speech. I'm from Trinity, and I gave that always gets laughed. Okay, snakes aside. I gave a speech at the Phil debate a few weeks ago in Trinity, and it was on the topic of whether terrorism and the act of terrorism can be viewed as rational. And after I sat down, the next speaker got up, and he thanked both the first speaker, the very first person to speak, the philosophy master's student, and he thanked him for that, and then he thanked me, who he called the lovely lady before him. I hadn't said anything lovely. I'd spoken about Hamas and the IRA and whether terrorism, is a there's a political theory behind it. But that didn't matter. Because I was wearing a short leather skirt and I was pretty. So it was lovely of me to stand up and give debating a go. I mean, obviously I just was unimpressed at this. And because I thought I was unimpressed in what was viewed not the most important part of the debate I'd given. And so when I went home and explained to my mum, she said to me, if you don't want to be viewed that way, why do you dress like it? Now it's not the guy's fault. In all fairness, he apologized afterwards. No, nor is it my mother's. But I live in a society where the way that I look will always be viewed and always will be valued before any other part of me. When I tell people that I was an A1 student at maths, they just say they look surprised because I don't look like the kind of person, society views you either as attractive or intelligent, pretty or talented. It's an either or situation. And that's fine if it's based on a choice, if it's something you can opt into. You can be viewed beautiful, or you can be viewed as something more substantial, but it's what you that decide it. But it isn't. It's because society decides that for you. I'll take Juliet in a second. Sorry. I can't choose to be valued for my intelligence or my personality, which I much rather would, or even my debating skills. I can't decide any of that. It's society is obsessed with this image of beauty, and that will always be the most important aspect of me. The size of my waist will always be more important than my IQ, and that's incredibly demoralizing. Juliet.
Okay, so considering you think that the IQ of someone is important, but we also can't opt into whether we are smart or whether we are able to
but the thing,
maths, why does that matter?
The thing is, though, you can actually try. If you're not intelligent naturally, you can actually go to the library and you can study. You just can't do anything to grow 5 extra inches, it's just not anything you can even bother trying. And this idea of beauty, it just diminishes so many people to simply aesthetic value. No one cares that Nigella Lawson studied in Oxford, that she speaks 4 languages and has a master's in medieval language, or even that she's a talented cook. She's valued at the point at which she seductively pours wine into meals and then she eats leftovers in her silk pajamas. And even if she did choose that, which she didn't, she can never escape from it. No one will ever value her for other than that. No one will ever say that she's a great cook and then she's beautiful. It is the most important part of her to society. And the worst part about this is that you're valuing people on a metric that is completely subjective, and it leaves you at the mercy of others. When society only values you being pretty, that depends on people actually viewing you that way. You're important when you're pretty, and if people don't think you are, you're nothing then. You're not valued. If you're intelligent, whether people believe it or not, your IQ tests are far more abstract than people's preferences. Trends in being pretty come and go. In the 18th century, the most attractive quality was to be curvy, and now it's the only way is a size 6. When a woman gets older and she ages, she's seen as having seen better days. And this is the problem. What value do we put on these attractive, pretty people like Kendall Jenner and Gigi Hadid? What value will they have in 50 years? They exist to society at the point at which they are a service of us, and then they are dismissed. And like, what also hurts is that like we just never discuss these problems. We never discuss why pretty hurts. We never address it because to us it seems ridiculous that those who are pretty and those that benefit from this ridiculous system, you should have anything to complain about. You know, like your life is easy and therefore you have no problems. Like Kendall Jenner, like nothing that she says matters because she's pretty and she gets like paid for it and that's all that we care about. And the problem is like when we silence these harms that exist on the side, we create this like distorted like narrative. Like that, you know, when you're attractive and when you like follow what society told you, you have no issues and the grass is greener on that side than it is for anyone else. And this is so harmful for our society because young girls and boys, they grow up thinking that this is like what they should aim for, like this is it. I mean, like, all you have to do is like go into like Instagram and Tumblr and see things like, oh, like, I wonder what it'd be like to be the girl that every guy fancies, or like, you know, if I was prettier, like, you know, like my life would be easier, because that's what people think. They think that this is like the dream life. Like, they think that this is what matters, and like, society tells us we spend our life achieving it, when realistically, it doesn't make you any better. It doesn't make you any happier. Like, young girls and boys, that they starve themselves and they restrict themselves and they like do absolutely humiliated. And but like what they think is this ideal life, this perfect life that we've told them, because we don't let anyone talk. If I just had a thigh gap, like if I was just taller, if I was just more muscly, like life would be better. Because all they see is this perfect world. They see the world that these models exist in. They see this world the Abercrombie people on the bags exist in. And because we completely devalue any person who tries to talk against it, we like completely devalue models who say, actually, like, I don't get any dates. No one talks to me because they're so intimidated. We say that's irrelevant because you're pretty and you benefit from the system and nothing you say like it matters. The problem is it's a completely distorted narrative, because when there is no oppression, like when there is no like harms, like we don't talk about the harms, people think that this is a perfect life and they strive their hardest to like live this life and they put themselves at risks and harms, like kids like really hurt themselves to live this life that we've told them is perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, a society that forces girls into diets at age 13 and boys to throw up in the bathroom is intolerable and wrong. A society that's obsessed with pretty hurts everybody in it. I beg you to propose.
I call upon the first opposition speaker, Dublin. Here.
So, when I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what would I be? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? And here's what she said to me. The societal perceptions of beauty that have been thrust upon you by corporate conglomerates and the patriarchy is not an end goal to be fulfilled at some intangible point in the misty future. Rather, when you learn that prettiness is a varied, complex, and continuous state of being which is accessible to everyone, that extends far beyond mere flesh and physical attributes, you realize that childhood dreams of someday once obtaining this seemingly elusive and highly coveted prettiness that on proposition side of the house can only be achieved through capital gain and physical discomfort is redundant. Because prettiness and the self-love gained from the realization that one is inherently pretty is a process. Or she said something along those lines anyway. Members of the House, tonight my 3 main points of this speech will be that pretty gives autonomy to oppressed people. Pretty empowers people, particularly women, to love their bodies, and pretty has the capability to extinguish oppressive and hateful mindsets of society. But first, some rebuttal. The previous speaker she stated something along the lines of the fact that, you know, in her answer to our side's POI, that it negates any kind of integration between intelligence and beauty because they are 2 separate things. But we believe on our side of the house that pretty gives a sense of escapism to those who have nothing else, who were not given opportunities to thrive in academia or in society as a whole. For example, Isis King, a former contestant on America's Next Top Model, was a formerly homeless transgender woman who was literally picked up off the streets as part of the show and given the opportunity to thrive based on her looks. On the point about Kendall and Gigi, we believe on our side of the house that we believe that pretty gives autonomy to women to just have fun and express themselves and use their autonomy to just thrive in society as they can. No, thank you. And we also believe in the inherent value of prettiness on your own standards. On our side of the house, prettiness is a process, as I've said, and not an end goal. onto the guts of my speech. So, as I've said, no thank you, prettiness as a concept does not hurt. On the contrary, we on OP believe that prettiness allows people both to survive and to thrive. We stand not only in opposition to the motion that this House believes that pretty hurts, but also to the model, in opposition to the model of prettiness presented to the floor by Prop. Namely, white, cisnormative, Eurocentric, skinny, able-bodied ideals of beauty, no thank you, that are unattainable for those who actually fit those categories and unfathomable for those who do not. We appreciate the fact that prettiness as a concept it does not exist in a vacuum. However, we recognize that the concept is warped to operate in relation to institutions of oppression that directly impact marginalized people. No, thank you. For example, racist, ableist, or transmisogynistic beauty standards. We on OP challenge and defy those standards and call for a radical restructuring of oppressive industries and institutions and a continual broadening of the very definition of pretty to encompass all forms of prettiness. An abolishment of the so-called hurtful concept of prettiness itself is absurd. We believe this is not only counterproductive, as it does not directly challenge the institutions of oppression that influence these toxic ideas and mainly just sweeps them under the carpet, no thank you, but also directly harmful, as it would rob autonomy from many individuals who seek the comfort and the frankly good vibes that result from feeling pretty. We on OP recognize that prettiness does in fact boost self-esteem. When people are included, people feel better about themselves. People can learn to recognize the worth that lies beneath their skin when prettiness is framed as an opportunity for them to learn how to appreciate their bodies rather than a luxury as it is framed on Prop. When we begin this process, and it is a process of loving ourselves, of recognizing our inherent beauty and worth as humans, that love extends outwards to those around us and creates narratives of appreciation, of validation, and of simple but often crucial acknowledgements of people's efforts and life experiences. So if it isn't pretty that hurts, then what is? Where does the hurt come from? We believe that the real hurt comes from the toxic and oppressive mindsets that influence our daily interactions and perceptions of one another. We on OP, as I have said, who defy and condemn these systems of oppression, therefore view prettiness as a not only liberatory avenue through which oppressed peoples can celebrate their worth, but a fucking necessity. Prettiness boosts autonomy in how an individual functions in certain environments, in defiance to people and institutions that tell them that they have no inherent value, that they should never feel comfortable or safe or at home in their bodies. Prettiness allows people to take control of how they navigate the world, and how they interact with others and themselves on a daily basis.
Question.
No, thank you. Following on from that, no, thank you. We on OP believe that prettiness empowers people to love themselves. Femininity is generally what we think of when we think of prettiness, and therefore arguing that pretty hurts and calling on industries and movements worldwide to eschew pretty and therefore femininity, we believe that this directly harms trans women and trans feminine people, who are often the very people who rely on pretty to survive, as in the example I gave with Isis King. The mainstream second and third wave feminists and even modern feminist movements negate the notion that prettiness has any intrinsic value, no thank you, and argue that it actually harms the feminist struggle for liberation. We on OP believe that those claims are both ludicrous and dangerous. The prioritization of stereotypically masculine behaviour over femme aesthetics violently impacts trans femme people, who often need to present in a pretty manner in order to make it home safe at night. However, outside of this need for survival, femme prettiness is necessary for trans femme people to explore and express their gender in order to thrive as human beings. Harry Neff, a trans model, actress and self-proclaimed accidental activist, once posed the question, is it our fault if the dominant man-made beauty ideals exclude the bodies that some of us were born with? The answer is, of course, no.
Yeah, on this.
No. This poignant reflection on how trans femmes people's desire and need to look and feel pretty on their own terms negates the socially ignorant idea that pretty hurts. This is a focal point of autonomy of prettiness. Even Beyoncé, from whom we take this week's very motion, acknowledges that we on OP are totally in the right here. She said it herself. The pain's inside, and nobody frees you from your body. We therefore ask the members of Proposition why they feel it is so vital to deny people the ability to feel pretty when they live lives that are so degrading, so emotionally diminishing, so full of hatred from those around them and from themselves that it is nigh on impossible for them to feel any sort of positivity towards their physical appearance. Why do Prop consistently negate these people's opportunities to integrate frankly radical acts of love into their lives based on these people's false perception of prettiness being vapid, vacuous and inherently oppressive, rather than a neutral tool that can be manipulated in order to gain a more rounded understanding of one's own inherent value outside of physical factors? We on OP understand that an aura of prettiness does not simply come from either within or without. we recognise that pretty is a state of mind that when individuals are allowed to express themselves in the manner in which they feel most comfortable and safe can lead to a revolutionary trend in the manner in which a revolutionary trend of people of all walks of life loving themselves fiercely and without apology. Our side of the house acknowledges that the celebration of pretty extends to everyone. When we feel pretty, we want to make others feel pretty too. I've been Quiva, they've been Ron. So proud to oppose.
Now we call upon Louis Keating as the second of proposition. Here.
Hi everyone, it's nice to be here today. Is that my lipstick fine? Okay, so in order to look at the both sides, especially our side, we need to figure out what pretty is. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we feel pretty? And boys as well, how do you feel pretty? How does everyone feel pretty? I think it's important to look at history. First of all, patriarchy. Patriarchy is obviously a consciousness, and I'm not talking about a spiritual consciousness, I'm talking about a way of thinking that we have underwent for the last 5,000 years studying history. It might not be perceivable to us to see, but patriarchy is, and this is no attack on the men, don't worry, because what am I? So it's not an attack on anyone. It's the idea that beauty comes from an idea of what males say that women should look like, or what women feel they should look like based on magazines and beauty. So beauty is subjective. It's in the eye of the beholder. That's what we believe. That's what I believe. And who am I to stand here and say this is what everyone should believe, or this is what, that's what I believe. It's in the eye of the beholder. Society for years has taught me what a woman should look like, what a woman should be. A woman is like, 5'7"? I'm not 5'7". I'm definitely not 5'7". She has narrow shoulders, which I could take out a whole room like Hulk Hogan. I can't. I don't have that. So I've been growing up with ideas of how I should act, how I should think, how I should look, based on what beauty is, based on what a woman is. And as a trans person, or whatever label you want to put on me, I have found it to be a lot harsher than what a lot of girls would find. And I'm sure girls find it, I don't know what girls find it, I'm sure they find it really hurtful in terms of what they should be to pretty. But I feel it hurts me as a person who would be labelled as transgender in society, because if I talk too deeply, or if I don't walk a certain way, I am what's known as clocked, which is when you're giving away, there's a man, there's a bloke, 10 out of 10 to you, Sherlock. So, we have to understand, we have to ask ourselves, what is femininity? Well, I believe firmly that femininity is an energy. Now, don't get creeped out. I'm not Jehovah's. I'm not trying to, no offense to anyone, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm a spiritualist shop around the corner. I don't have that. But basically, I believe that energy is a sort of frame of mind. It's to do with the left and the right brain. Don't freak out. So it's to do with it's a certain energy. When you're with your girlfriend, you're with your boyfriend, and you feel they're different from you. You feel that different energy that you can connect to. That's feminine or masculine energy. So I feel that as a trans woman, whatever you want to call me, I'm very feminine. But on the outside, I might have things that don't look as feminine, especially without makeup, and especially, before I grew my hair or whatever. I got surgery because I felt inadequate with my chest, because I was like Holland. The country. So, I needed to find out what it is about myself to be more feminine. So I got that, and, it hurt me to have to get that, but in the end it was good. But what is it that makes femininity? What is it that makes pretty? We have to look inside ourselves and ask ourselves these questions. I mean, does it make me any less pretty or any less feminine if I don't have any makeup on, if I'm wearing a tracksuit? Where is my femininity then? You have to ask yourself these deep questions. They do come into it. Sometimes I feel like, when I'm going out, when I'm going out to a nighttime or whatever, I have to dress a certain way to pass, or to be pretty enough for people to sort of not slag me or look out at me. And I don't want to victimize myself at all, because the last thing I want to do as a trans or whatever, I don't want to victimize myself. That's the worst thing I could do. So, but it is in a way, if you don't wear your hair a certain way, or there are a lot of trans people that wouldn't be as passable as I would. But why should we have to pass? Why should we have to pass as female? Why can't we be our own feminine, people? Why can't we have our own femininity? Why do we have to have breasts, and why do we have to have a tiny nose or narrow shoulders, or we have to be like 2'1"? Why can't we just literally be our own people? Like, we have to ask ourselves these questions. So, you know, when I began to stand up for gay rights, whatever, you know, we have to gay, trans, whatever. These are all just labels at the end of the day. We're all just people. We all have insecurities just like anyone. We all, you know, we all eat dinner. We all do everything. So we have to ask ourselves these questions. They're very important. So I do believe that pretty hurts. I definitely believe it hurts. It really hurt me now in these shoes. So, you know, but against the physical side of it, it does hurt, and it has a lot of pain from within here. And I ain't talking about these bellends either. So yeah, it does hurt. It definitely does, and it's very. There are times when I've asked myself, like, why do I have to walk a certain way? Why do I have to talk a certain way? Why? Like, there's often times where I'd use a different voice within certain people, and it's very uncomfortable for me. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. I don't believe I should have to do that as a person. So yeah, and beauty is also you know, the ideals of a small blonde, you know, or girls often feel like in order to impress a guy, I find that a lot of my girlfriends, when they go out, they have to wear their hair down all the time. They can't wear it up. Like, why can't we wear it? Because guys love down hair. Like, it's just, I'm not being feminist here, don't worry. I love everyone. I'm not trying. But I do find definitely there is an ideal of pretty. You know, I'm wearing eyelashes. I'm the biggest hypocrite going. But, like, I do that because I want to do it, because it makes me feel pretty. But we have to find our own pretty. We have to find inside what makes us feel comfortable. Like, if we're, say, going out with our friends and we want to wear our hair up, we want to throw on a tracksuit, we've every right to do that. We are empowered humans, and we should be able to empower ourselves to whatever ideal of what we feel beautiful as, and whatever our pretty is. So that's my take on the whole thing. And, you know, femininity is defined by society, by magazines, by beauty industries, by patriarchy, which is not men ruling the world with knives. It's the consciousness of a masculine side of the brain that has been taught to us through schools, through books, through teaching. That's why there's so many wars. It promotes dualistic thinking. The masculine consciousness is primarily dualistic, and it needs a balance of femininity and masculinity to balance everything out, so everyone can be happy. And, you know, there you go. So.
Speech. We now call upon Ethan Brannigan as a second option speaker. Here.
All right, I have a lot of pages, so give me 1 second. Okay. So I'm not going to do much rebuttal because you don't really want to hear that, but the first thing I'm actually going to say is that what we keep getting from proposition is beauty is subjective and it's in the eye of the beholder. I'm a law with economics student, so I'm really happy to say that it's actually not. There is an economic method that we entertain beauty, and when taking a sample of about 3,000 people in the US, they all said the same things were beautiful. So it can actually be broken down, and that's going to play into, no thank you, quite a large part of my speech. Okay, so I'm going to tell you 2 main things. First of all, why there is a little random hypocrisy in here, and secondly, why by being pretty pays and that pretty is power. So we do not shame people who are born and naturally intelligent. We do not tell them that by being intelligent, that is a bad thing. We do not tell them that by using their natural intelligence to further themselves in the workplace and to get a job in the first place, no thank you, is a bad thing, or that it is, and we do not tell people that who work harder to become more intelligent, that they are propagating a negative societal impact on human beings. We don't say that. So why? No thank you either. So why, when we reverse this situation into pretty, do we tell people that it is wrong for them to do that? Why do we tell them that they cannot try to be prettier because that is bad for society as a whole? Both beauty and intelligence are important economic commodities on the job market. Having one is good, having both is excellent. So why are we preventing people from trying to actually have both and to further themselves? So being pretty helps in the workplace. It helps with your labor in the labor force. Pretty people earn between 3 and 4% more than their non-pretty counterparts. Being pretty means you're 11% more likely to actually get a call back for a second interview. Being pretty is an economic commodity. Economists have kindly translated this for us into business lingo. Being pretty is our erotic capital, and it is seen as something which is integral these days. Yes.
If you don't have erotic capital and therefore are not pretty, would you say that you are hurt by that?
No, because there is no such thing as not having erotic capital. All women from the start have erotic capital. Why do they do this? Because we can break down being pretty into about 4 or 5 categories that are quite easy to actually achieve given clothing, makeup, and confidence. And I know you're all going to be disgusted by this idea, but it is unfortunate, well, it is the truth, that women have more erotic capital than men, simply because the female body has been sexualized far more than the male body, and because women generally work harder for this. Okay, so you're all thinking this is pretty gross on the surface. The reason why this isn't gross and why this can be used to our advantage is that it can further women in the workplace, which is something that we need to further women in society. No, thank you. So looking at research done by people like the economist Catherine Hackram from the UK, we see that female lawyers who are ranked as pretty earn between 10 and 12% more than their not so pretty counterparts. Being seen as pretty allows women to access to higher earnings and higher status in society, both of which we believe are highly important in this day and age. No, thank you. Being pretty doesn't hurt, but it can be used in much more powerful ways. Yes.
Well, if everyone does indeed gain this erotic capital and becomes pretty, due to the subjectiveness of it and how it's only valuable if it's rare, wouldn't then there would be a new unrealistic standard reached, and then there would still only be 10 or 12% while everybody else gets hurt?
Okay, why we don't agree with that is because it is not about women, it's not about a subgroup of women. It is about women in general being able to access this as being female and being innately able to use this erotic capital, to use their sexuality in a way that our bodies have been sexualized for the past several decades, and we are not allowed to play the game of this sexualization. What is happening is the businesses are benefiting from this sexualization of our bodies, while women themselves are not allowed to take control over it. So instead of playing the game in any way, we are told to take a step back by the feminist movements that are going on. By taking this step back and by trying to opt out, which is actually impossible, we are simply letting these big multinational corporations splay female bodies across adverts and them to get the gain from this, both the financial reward and the reward by keeping the rest of the women in society down in the lower ranks of the hierarchical companies. So why are we probably trapped in this position? Well, it's probably because of this sexualization and because the patriarchal system imprinted into us that there are certain morals that women cannot step over. One of the morals being that men and corporations that are run by men can benefit from our sexualized bodies. So they can use our bodies to sell watches. They can use our bodies to sell cars. However, women cannot. And it is morally culpable to a lot of you people. You think that this is dirty and disgusting what I'm talking about because this hasn't been ingrained into you, that we cannot use our bodies. We cannot use what society is putting on us for our own benefit. No, thank you. No, thank you. Actually, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that women are actually coming out and empowering themselves, their bodies, instead of, being sexualized. There's a big difference in that, and most majority of art and advertisements about cars have genuinely been about men driving a car and showing how masculine they are, rather than being this woman who's objectifying themselves on them. I've personally, from what I've seen on TV and advertising, there's to show that you're selling in economics. In fact, more adverts are now coming out saying about empowerment. For instance, the guy originally who went on the CoverGirl magazine and was empowering himself because he was trans. It's a big thing as well. So
we say that is unfortunately in the minority and that there is still this gross sexualization. Also, unfortunately, due to the last several decades of this, as opposed to the last few months of people coming out, we can still play the game and win. But instead of it, this opt-out scenario just isn't working. The more attractive we are is actually deemed, when we're more attractive, people have a different perspective of us. It is shown that if you are more attractive, you are deemed to be more trustworthy, more competent, more intelligent, and kinder. These things all equate to furthering yourself in the workplace. Being pretty does not hurt. Not being allowed to use your prettiness to succeed is what is causing pain. Young women can exploit prettiness and erotic capital in the way that young men exploit subconscious sexism and biases toward which help them in our society. Pretty does not hurt. Pretty evens the playing field. Telling people that pretty hurts and that being pretty or using their prettiness is a bad thing and innately anti-feminist prevents women themselves from benefiting from what society deems as one of our most important assets. Our bodies. Pretty does not hurt. Pretty pays, and pretty evens the playing field. Thank you.
As a third proposition speaker here.
Look, on proposition, we are not trying to prevent people from looking a certain way. In fact, like the exact opposite. We're not saying that being pretty or whatever is like not a good thing or not a something that we're saying that the pursuit of it is something that hurts. And that's the point. The pretty can hurt. It's not the act of being pretty. It's the societal expectations, and the pressure is too much. And that's what we're trying to say. I want to respond to this point about like erotic capital and how it's apparently like good. But, like, first of all, like erotic capital relates to sexuality and being like sexual, which is something that people can choose to act in a certain way if they want to. It's not the same. You can't opt in to being pretty. That's not how it works. But moreover, like as in, if you get a promotion because the boss wants to like have sex with you, how far are you going to go? Like you have a glass ceiling there that you're not going to be able to get past. So we don't see it being good. And also, like, I'm pretty happy to say end capitalism. No one uses no one uses their body to sell anything. That's fine. But honestly, like into my speech, okay? Because honestly, like I feel that I've been taught to hate myself. That there are cosmetic companies like trying to sell me fixes for things that I didn't even know were problems that existed. There are Photoshop models trying to tell me like how to look, how to become the impossible, or to die trying. Okay, like you don't look good enough, and here's 10 easy tips to fix that. And all you have to do is sacrifice some part of yourself to the altar of the gods of like who knows what anymore. And like sometimes I wonder why it is that we sell makeup in pharmacies, because we treat appearance like an illness that somehow like needs to be remedied. Like I like to think that I'm the type of girl who puts on makeup because I want to, but I can't help but wonder that when I look in the mirror and put on foundation to cover up the redness and put on blush to put the redness back in the right place, that maybe I'm not doing it to stand out, but I'm doing it to fit in. And like, look, pretty like is simply like not accessible to everyone, as opposition tried to claim. Like, how can you ever see yourself as attractive, as good enough, when all the media that you consume just tells you that you don't look the right way? How are you supposed to love yourself when you're just not good enough? Like ultimately, it's not up to me to decide whether or not I am attractive. It's up to the men on the street who shout compliments at me. It's up to the people who decide to like my Facebook profiles. To guys in the club who think it's okay to slap my ass and then look offended when I call them out on it. Like, as happened like literally last week. And honestly, like, it makes me feel more like an object than a real life human being. My appearance is appraised and evaluated at every turn, and it's all I can do to try and not like drown in it. And I feel like I'm forced to live in a world of if I could just lose a few pounds, if I could just find the right shade of lipstick, if I could just achieve some kind of perfection, no thank you, then maybe like I could be happy. Like, I'm not quite sure what comes after I achieve the things that I could only just. But it leaves to stray thoughts like, would I rather eat this pizza or lose a few kilos at every meal? You have to weigh up those kind of decisions. And the problem is that there's always something that you could just do, because like pretty is a lie, but it doesn't mean that we're not forced to swallow it every single day. And maybe it's a state of mind they try to claim, but it fucking sucks and it really hurts. So like, that's how it is. And it seems like we are encouraged like every day to take steps to correct our flaws, because society doesn't really want women to be beautiful or like too beautiful. And women who embrace the expectations that are put on them are seen as vain or accused of false advertising themselves as though they are products to be taken stock of and sold. And I wonder like how it is that people like see me when I'm getting up here to speak. Like, do they see just another like average girl, or do they see what I see when I'm forced to look in the mirror? A girl of average height who could probably like lose a few pounds, probably go to the gym more, thin hair, eyes eyes maybe a little bit too close together, nose a little too big, like chubby arms, chubby thighs, big hips, bags under my eyes, bite my nails, chew my lips, periods of bad skin, all these things that I'm forced to evaluate on myself every day. Even aspects of my body I do like, I begin to hate when they attract crude comments. I had someone fill out an evaluation on a speech I was giving about opening all borders, saying, mediocre, great rack though, as though that was all I had to contribute. Like, thank you, I do know that they exist on my chest, but like, I can't help but like my body is supposed to be seen, it's supposed to be mine alone because I inhabit it, but it's inhabited by all the looks that I receive on the streets, all the things that have been shouted at me, and I become filled with the eyes of everyone else, and they become my eyes, and I can't help but see myself as they do. Can't help that maybe think that I maybe should cover up or change my outfit just in case, but I cannot stop people from looking. And this is how we treat women, as mirrors to be gazed upon, who cannot gaze back, who cannot break the glass, who are imprisoned in their bodies. No, thank you. Op says that, quotes Beyonce and says, no one frees you from your body. But I heard from my friend that the baggage that a woman carries with her through life is her body. And there's no way that you can get out of that. No, thank you. And that's a problem. Okay, last summer, I overheard my eldest brother, William, arguing with my other brother, John, with his girlfriend, explaining that it does no good to call ugly girls beautiful. Like how you shouldn't lie and tell girls, you should just tell them that they're ugly or fat or imperfect. And this will somehow help them. What he means, of course, is that you should body shame women into changing so you don't have to look at them. And it's funny the way that a moment can crystallize for you, how you can be both in that room and be 14 years old and have cried for 2 days straight because you thought those words couldn't hurt you anymore, but he called you a fat little girl and you're not really over that yet. Or you could be 15 and crying because he's gone and ruined Christmas once again, and your other brother is saying to you, it'll be okay, Catherine, you can write about this in your first novel. Or you could be 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 and be told that you're ugly or fat and that no boys will ever like with you. And it sticks with me that I was told these things. Even though I've grown up, realised that my eldest brother is human trash and moved on. Because in a world where you have to be pretty, these words have a way of becoming you and being like you're unbecoming. And it seems that the first thing about a woman that is used against her is her appearance. To not be pretty is to fail, to not be good enough, to have not fulfilled your societal role as supplicant. And more than anything else, more than my intelligence, my interest, it was my appearance, my desirability, my marriageability that fell under most scrutiny. I've had men on Tinder turn around and tell me, I didn't mean to be a wanker, but you're a bit of a bitch anyway. And if I looked at what you did, I'd take what I could get. When I didn't like the sexually aggressive messages that he was sending me. What a nice guy. Almost like it was a punishment for me not acting in a certain way and not playing along. I'm not called snarky or bitter or sassy. I'm called unattractive. Look, the point that I want to make is, in the end, I don't get to decide what pretty is. Society does. And that's why it really hurts. And that's why, before this debate, I found myself asking my friend Katie over there if she thought I was even pretty enough to seek prop on this debate. And I guess, as always, it's up to the audience to decide.
Third opposition speaker here.
Right, well, you know when you go through phases of forgetting that, the world's a bit shit, today, and then you just remember, God, this morning I thought my eyes were a bit too close as well, and I'd actually just, completely forgotten until Catherine reminded me. But I still do, well, not that you told me my eyes were too close together, obviously, but, no, I do believe that, women have a lot of shit thrown up against them, okay? In the working world and things like that. And I am going to kind of focus in on that today. But one thing that we do have is our ability to sort of control our appearance, at least more than men, okay? And that is why I believe that beauty and prettiness can help women, okay? So first of all, I want to say beauty standards are shit. I think that we should attempt to change or at least broaden them, okay? So that it does include as many people as include everyone, because obviously it should, okay? Because I think that we do, no thank you, because I think that if you are a woman, okay, and you're looking around, I think it's really rare that you'll ever look at another girl and think she's not pretty. I do think as women, we do sort of like look at other girls, all other girls, and think that they are beautiful, okay? So I think that the media should portray this, but obviously it doesn't, and that's what I'm going to talk about mainly today, okay? So, I think girls, we are brought up, obviously, as has been mentioned so many times, this patriarchal society, okay? But I think and where we are told to look a certain way. But I think we learn certain skills from that, okay? Ones that men don't have. We learn how to, like, do our makeup from a really young age. We learn how to, like, blow dry our hair. We learn how to do that turby thing, you know, the one that boys apparently find really confusing, okay? We learn how to, like, dress in the way that is going to, like, make us, I suppose, look the best, okay? These are skills that, for the most part, men aren't taught, and that's probably shit. And maybe but these are skills that we can use in the job market, okay? These are skills that when we go into an interview, we can say, like, I'm going to put my best foot forward, and I'm going to dress in the way that makes me look best, okay? And I'm going to do my hair in the way that makes me look best. And I'm going to, like, cover up my dark circles, okay? And I'm going to give myself eyebrows, because I actually don't have any, okay? And these are things, okay, that we essentially are making up from the fact that men in society have, like, the upper hand, okay? So by us using these skills that we are inherently taught, okay, and using them to our advantage, okay, they are benefiting us, okay? So you can choose to, I suppose, reject these skills and not use them, okay? Or you can embrace them, okay? There aren't a lot of things that men have over women, but this opportunity to, like, make ourselves look a certain way and the way that we want is one thing that we have, okay? And this isn't a harm, this is a benefit, okay? To go into a job interview or a meeting and to be able to look the way you want to look, okay? That is a benefit. Okay? We should embrace this and we should welcome the opportunity to have this thing over men. Okay, so why should we use it, okay? Ideally, I suppose everyone is judged on their personality, but we don't live in that world, okay? We will never live in a world where we aren't judged on our appearance. Because, because there are, like, animalistic instincts that are going on in, like, our brains or something that make you find certain people attractive, okay? These things are never going to change. They're never going to end, okay? Because it's like the chemicals working in our brain, okay? So we as women, we have the opportunity to, like, take advantage of those things and do it so that we can use them to our benefit, okay? Yes.
Right, so this isn't a debate about whether or not being pretty could help you get a job or not. Regardless of the fact that I will put on makeup to go to a job interview, the fact that I have to make that decision is what hurts me.
Okay. But, like, I think that we also have to look at it as, like, it is benefiting you, okay? Because you are taking the opportunity to do something to make, you are doing something to, suppose, like, give yourself that leg up to, like, equate you to a man, okay? Because as women, you know, there's so many statistics that, like, women aren't treated equally in job interviews. There's, like, the whole, like, women need a first for what men need a 2-1, okay? And this is good, okay? And for every woman that makes a step forward, okay, it gives visibility to other women, okay? It means women hiring women is a better thing, okay? It means that we are sort of, like, conquering the patriarchy, like, one step at a time, okay? And because this... No, I'm finishing up now anyway. Because this is a beneficial thing, okay? This isn't a harm. And that's why we truly believe that pretty does not harm. Thank you.
So when I was writing this speech, writing a couple of words on a sheet of paper, a lot of anecdotes came to my mind, and I thought maybe I would just name and shame some of my friends who did some funny things and funny stories. But ultimately that would just make me more sad than you because they're my friends. But what I did think was of a couple of things that I'm sure most people in this room have heard. Like when my mother said to me, you'd be a lot more pretty if you smiled more, if you stopped slumping your shoulders and God stopped arguing with those boys that could be your future husbands. That my friends literally thinking they were doing the right thing, and on a night out with the whole committee of the LNH, they didn't call me pretty when they called all the other girls pretty, and I was like, oh crap. And then they're like, no, but you're a feminist, we thought you didn't want to be called pretty. So they thought it was the right thing. I, on some level, think it's the right thing. On other levels, it's nice to be called pretty. The problem is, and indeed the problem with all debates is, everyone seems to think it has to be all negative things and all positive things, that it can help you get a job and you have to denounce being pretty. That's not what this motion, for me anyway, is it about. Yes, we've been called hypocrites, and I think everyone is a hypocrite in this debate. And the reason for that is, that's why it hurts. The fact that you are being a hypocrite to yourself hurts. Because I want to be able to walk into a room with no makeup on, with like it isn't even that fancy, but without a dress on, and feel completely confident and feel as good as Aoife describes people feeling when they go in for their interview. But I can't, because for my whole life I have been told to be pretty. Not just in a direct my mother sort of way, but in a how we talk to young girls sort of way. So I don't know anyone who has little kids in their lives or whatever, but you see a boy when they're born, you're like, oh, you're handsome, you're strong. Or you talk to them about what they did in their day. But when you see a young girl and she's wearing a dress, the first thing most people say is, isn't that a pretty dress? Or, don't you look pretty today? And the problem is, you grow up and you believe that that is how social interactions work. That you are validated at the point where someone says, you look pretty, right? Now, this isn't just for females, but unfortunately it does happen a lot to females. The problem with this, though, is that on an extreme level, you can get a lot of the harms that have already been talked about. You can get people dieting themselves to look pretty, people forcing themselves to wear makeup every day when they might not want to. But even at its best, even the woman who is the most passionate, confident, successful woman who feels she doesn't need to wear makeup, who feels that she doesn't need to do anything, she will still question herself. She will still wonder, is she pretty? She will still think, if I was prettier, maybe he would go out with me. Maybe he would answer my text message. They wouldn't have to look in the mirror and go, oh, if I just didn't eat that cheesecake, would I be prettier? Oh, but cheesecake's so good, right? So the problem is, you are constantly a hypocrite to yourself. The word pretty makes you a hypocrite. It is what hurts you. It is what makes the voice in your head question yourself when you go to sleep. Do I have the shower tonight so that my hair looks a little bit better in the morning? Or do I watch the next episode of Breaking Bad that all my male friends got to watch because they weren't spending 2 hours shaving their fucking legs, right? That's why pretty hurts. Also, thinking back to 12-year-old Lucy, the times where I had a thigh gap and had unplucked eyebrows, right? There were slightly more comfortable times. We've already made the physical joke of pretty hurts, but like literally, women lose like 3 hours a day in some cases to looking pretty, right? You lose time in the morning that men just get to sleep, or like people who don't care about being pretty, they just get to sleep, like, or they get to, like, when we go to debating competitions and you get to a final and you're like, yes, I'm in a final, it's supposed to be about like who's witty. All the female speakers in that debate are in the bathroom putting makeup on so that when a Facebook photo is taken and you're put up screaming, by the way, they'll all be horrible because no one looks attractive screaming, like, or like, well, like societally attractive, right? The problem with that is male speakers don't give a shit, right? They go in, they're like, I'm in a final, I'm to class. Women speakers are standing there going, oh God, while I'm giving my speech, I'm literally thinking about it now. People are going to look at me on YouTube and they're going to go, oh, her face looks real weird like that. Or, oh, she could have smiled more. Or, oh, she could have worn better lipstick. Her hair could have been down. Like, that is what's going through my head. Even when I'm giving a speech about how bad that is, that's what's going through my head. Isn't hypocrisy hilarious? Right. Problem number 2 with life, right? Opposition very correctly say that you can, feminists at least say that pretty can be whatever you want, that you can be comfortable, I'll take you later, can be comfortable in your own skin and you can find whatever makes you comfortable. The problem with that is, yeah, you can define what your version of pretty is. The problem is everyone else can also define what their version of pretty is. And if my version of pretty is me in my tracksuit bottoms with greasy hair and pimples, if no one else thinks that's what pretty is, I'm going to have a problem because people aren't going to go you're so pretty. They're going to go, oh, Stadia, right? The problem with that is, if humans were strong enough to live in a world where no one else's opinion mattered to them, yeah, they'd win. It'd be fine. But we don't. We live in a world where your biggest enemy often is that voice in your head, that voice that questions you, that stops you going for something, that stops you putting yourself up for that job because you're not as pretty as Lynette in accounting, who's going to use her social capital better, or her, whatever, sexual capital better than I can, right? Erotic capital, there we go. Also, erotic is about sex, not pretty, but anyway, right? That's the problem. You literally stop yourself doing things because if you're not pretty in our society, like societally pretty, in our society, that means you're ultimately worth less than someone who is pretty. Eva wants to talk about people who might get a job because they're pretty. For every woman who gets a job because she's pretty, that means the unpretty woman doesn't get the job, right? It hurts that person. You can pick individuals who benefit from the word pretty. That doesn't mean society as a whole does. The last thing I want to say on all this fun stuff is just genuinely that the opposition to this has been a little bit patronising, right? Because especially in the last two speeches, actually no, in all the speeches, I'm sure I'll come again, we got a lot of, you can define your own pretty, you can use makeup to make yourself pretty, and yes, that is true, but note, that's not how the makeup industry works. There's always something new. Apparently every new Max Factor mascara, it's the best ever. And then the next one comes out and it's even better. It's what will make you a little bit more pretty. Every single thing that comes out is the next thing to make you pretty, right? Because I thought 10 years ago that red lipstick was all I needed. Turns out I need about 50 different shades of red lipstick and they need to like match with different tones of my mood and like my personality, right? Apparently it doesn't matter that my mascara makes my lashes curly. They also have to make them long and extended. I thought they meant the same thing. I thought long and extended was the same thing. But according to Max Factor, there's different types of pretty for different types of girl. The problem, ultimately, with this massive rant that I've just done is that it puts pressure on everyone. And like we've left the men's out of this debate a fair bit, but it also puts them under pressure. We might not use the word pretty, but we put a lot of pressure on everyone in our society to look good. We put a lot of pressure on especially young people to try and fit in and look good. They can tell you be confident, but confidence is just a way of fighting the pressure that's put on. It doesn't eradicate it, and it doesn't eradicate that at night time you are hurt by that lack of confidence.
Cheers.
Ironically enough, someone's left a lipstick up here, so that's yeah. There you go. Because otherwise I was going to steal it. There was just like no way that I was going to get through this speech. So hi everyone. Lucy just called my side of the debate patronising, and then she was like, and you're definitely going to be patronising as well. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I think it's a patronising debate because ultimately, like, I think it's like hilarious. We had a debate about free speech last week, and there was like one woman speaker, and we have a debate about beauty this week, and it's all the women have come out. So like we given that is the case, like we acknowledge that there's toxic standards around what beauty should be and who should access beauty, but we say that it doesn't inherently hurt, and this is the underlying thing in the debate, that they have talked about consistently the idea of subjectivity and whether that is a good or a bad thing in the context of beauty, and they've come to the conclusion that it is bad. What I am saying, and what I've tried to say in points of information, is that subjectivity in anything that comes under the birth lottery, beauty being part of that but not the only aspect, can be bad for any given individual. Like, we hear an incredibly compelling portrayal from Catherine about the doubts that she goes through when she questions if she is beautiful enough. And you know what, I go through the same thing. But Catherine attends Trinity. She's an excellent debater. I know that I could debate and lose against her all the time, hopefully not tonight. But so Catherine probably doesn't have to question that often as to whether she's that intelligent, because all of the things in her life around her reflect that she is, okay? And intelligence, just like anything else, beauty included, is part of this birth lottery that we can't include. So is humor and compassion and your ability to be social. All of these things that we value in society are randomly allocated to us based on our two parents and whether they had sex at a certain time. So, like, we say that, like, it's I'm sorry, Lucy. I'm going to have to talk now. It's about the bird and the bees. So we say we say that, like, whilst prettiness maybe hurts, then everything else hurts. Intelligence, humor, your ability to be social, or none of it hurts. So I'm going to talk about why it doesn't hurt, and I'm going to talk about that under two kind of headings per se. So I'm going to talk about the transcendent nature of prettiness, and I'm going to talk about the importance of developing your erotic self. But that is different to Aoife's point on erotic capital. So first of all, on the transcendent nature of prettiness. So like this comes back into the point that everything is based on a birth lottery. And so we say that there are different things that have been valued throughout time. We say in medieval times, Steve Jobs would have died at like 8 from some disease because he was skinny and like not strong and stuff like that. And a medieval like soldier would have been like much more important because he can fight wars and he can bring Christianity to other lands and fight the toxic crusades and stuff like that. So that's what's valued in that time. Nowadays, we value people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, who we say are great at coming up with computer programs because their intelligence is a thing that happens to have benefited them in this society. However, there's one thing that has always been considered good, even if it's been considered good on like different metrics, is prettiness. And this is so important because it is something that is so innate to us. It is so core to our being, and that is why we are the ones who fret about it all the time, because above all, of course we want to be pretty. Everyone wants to be pretty, and there's nothing wrong with that, because when we want to be that, we give ourselves the opportunity to aspire to being towards that. And I'm not saying that in a flippant way of just like buy more foundation or something like that. I'm saying that in a way that you can carve out your context of what is pretty to you. And like this, I think, was addressed in the second prop speaker's speech when we heard about the ideas of like femininity and masculinity and all of those important things. And like I agree with you when you talk about like the gender binary that exists and how toxic that is, but I'm not sure how linked that is to prettiness. I think that's linked to a gender binary where we tell people you can only be one of two genders and you're wrong if you're not in between. But we think actually prettiness aids your ability to engage with that more, because you can now say to yourself, here's my in-between version of pretty. Here's how I dress, how I make myself up, how I engage with society to become that version of pretty. You can't become a version of intelligent. You either pass the Leaving Cert and get into one of Trinity's top courses, or you're doing arts in UCD. You can't like make your own version of funny. Either you're like Dylan Moran or Eddie Izzard, or like no one's laughing at your jokes. And like that's just the truth, and John knows. and that's just the truth of the matter. Pretty is so important because it is inherent to us, and we have an ability to shape it, and now on to our ability to shape it. So I'm going to talk about the importance of developing an erotic self, because we've been asked, what is the point of telling young girls that they are pretty? What is the point of people engaging with that when people are so young? And I would say it probably comes down to the fact that I would argue, like I used to write BDSM erotica for money. I'm super cool. And I had the pleasure of getting to engage with loads of people on a purely erotic platform where they just wanted to communicate that aspect of themselves. And it was utterly different to the public versions of themselves. And like, more power them. But we only this side of anyone doesn't get to be discussed in society. We lock it away and we say it's shameful, and we say, as Josh said, that you should be saying like 50 Hail Marys to like cover up the sin of wanting to engage with this side of yourself. And we think that when you start to acknowledge your prettiness, or when someone else starts to acknowledge your prettiness, is when you first begin to get an opportunity to take steps towards acknowledging your ability to be erotic and acknowledging your ability to be somewhat sexual. And we think that this is important, because when you don't get any other avenue to discuss it in society, at least it is positive that we start to create an internal monologue where you can begin to understand that about yourself. So you don't necessarily have to turn to porn, but you can if you want. But instead you begin to understand that concept of yourself. But I've only got 20 seconds left, so I'm going to wrap up and say I think the most important thing in this debate is that the birth lottery fucks everyone over. So either this debate is about whether the birth lottery hurts and we don't acknowledge any traits in society and we say that they all hurt, or we say that there's probably some benefits to them. And given I want to have faith in humanity, I'm just going to say there's probably some benefits to them. Please oppose. Thank you.
We thank all those speakers for their very, very fine speech. Now we're going to enter the Q&A part. So if anyone has a question to any of the speakers,